Hello, hello. Today we have week 9 NFL prep. 13 different matchups to choose from, 13 different starts. So let's begin reluctantly with Caleb Williams in the Chicago versus Cincinnati game. It's been a rough patch, to say the least. He started off as the quarterback 6 in fantasy over that first month, and he hit the bye week. Since then, he's been the quarterback 29. It hasn't been the greatest, but I think this is the get right spot for a lot of reasons. One, this Bengals defense is just bad. They're the second worst defense on the entire decade in terms of points allowed, but also it matches up well for this passing attack of Chicago. Williams, since that bye week, he's been scrambling less. It's more in the system. They're slowly learning in terms of Ben Johnson offense, trying to get the ball into the playmakers' hands and then go from there. That yards to catch efficiency will take over. The Bengals can't stop the yards after catch, way worse than anybody in the NFL. This defense is already bad. And we saw Williams, like he had that 4-touchdown day against Dallas. He has 5 touchdowns in terms of passing in all of his other games. Dallas has allowed 20 passing touchdowns in the year. Cincinnati is at 19, and then the next drops all the way down to 16. So this matchup can set up well for him. They don't pressure the quarterback. That helps them a lot too. They don't run a lot of too high. That helps in terms of those yards after catch situations, those explosive plays. So we'll see what happens, but I am hesitantly confident in Caleb Williams. I will say, though, I will not start him again over the next guy, which is Drake Maye. It's the exact same situation as we saw last week. Drake Maye has a pretty bad matchup. Caleb Williams has an incredible matchup. And yet Drake Maye, his matchups just haven't mattered. So I'm going to stop messing around with it. He's not a quarterback 8 or 9 this week because it's a horrible matchup, but he's just weekly top 5 no matter what his matchup is. His efficiency has been off the charts. Miami last week did play well against this Falcons passing defense. They had 205 passing yards, so not a lot of passing yards, and that's the most on the year. So it is a really tough matchup against the Falcons, but Tua also had 4 touchdowns. Maye, they're at home. His deep ball has been the best in terms of the numbers basically all time. It's been incredible, and he's still scrambling a lot, which helps. So even if it is one of those games where it isn't as close, which I don't fully expect it to be, I would expect it to be somewhat close, especially if Penix is in there over Kirk Cousins. But he's still running the ball a lot. He's extremely efficient with his volume, even though it's not incredible. So even in a tough matchup, he's played 3 games now where it's been a bottom 10 matchup. He's had 23 points in all 3 of those games. So Drake Maye, just that automatic start basically every single week now for me. This next one, Kimani Vidal. These last 3 games, his volume has been amazing, the 5th best in the NFL. And the matchups have been hit or miss, but this week he gets Tennessee, who have obviously not forced too many passing attempts. And that's the big thing for me here. The Chargers are so pass heavy, which isn't horrible for Vidal. He's been getting some receiving. But in terms of the volume on the ground, this is a great spot for him. They will most likely run a little bit more than usual when they're playing the Titans. So his volume's been 5th best of these last 3 weeks. He's been the RB10. The offensive line is getting healthier, and he's looked really good. He's trusted. Haskins still dealing with that hamstring injury. So I really liked Vidal this week in this matchup. Moving to this Indy and Pittsburgh game, I like all the receivers actually, both sides, but DK Metcalf is who I'll go with. I think he's set up for a nice little volume day. Last week, we saw this Pittsburgh team play the Packers. Rodgers, 36 passing attempts, his season high. I could see very similar here with how good this Indy offense has been. And they're 29th in passing yards per game allowed right now. So not the greatest passing defense. Part of that is because they are being thrown on so much. But their weakness has mainly been in the slot, but that's because Kenny Moore's been out and injured a lot of those games. So he is back healthy. So that is no longer like the spot you want to be targeting against this defense. I think a lot of that will move to DK Metcalf on the outside. He can get above 7 targets, which his volume hasn't been the greatest. His efficiency's just been incredible. So if we can get a game where maybe you expect 8 to 10 targets, I really like Metcalf in that spot. San Francisco and New York, Tyrone Tracy Jr., he isn't Scattaboo, but I don't think it is an insane fall off, especially just what we've seen from him last year, what we've seen from this offense this year. It sets up Tracy extremely well, I would say. His problem last year wasn't his talent. It wasn't really even his volume. It was just the volume in the blowout games. The Giants had a lot of games last year where they weren't very good. So what happens is they had the games where they were getting beat by over 10 points. In those games, Tracy only averaged 9 points per game. But games where they lost by 10 points or less or won, he averaged 15 points per game. And now this defense is a lot better. The quarterback play, obviously better. They're 2.5 point underdogs. So San Fran, they're 26 against running backs. Scadaboo was getting top 5 running back volume over this last month with Jackson Dart. That's the main thing I want to point out is Dart in this offense is run heavy, but they also still target the running backs out of the backfield. Good goal line work. So overall, I think that volume should be at least RB2 level. He was getting 80% of the touches in this Giants backfield these last couple of weeks when Scadaboo was out, whether he was injured or just taking a rest and the RB2 was in. So I think Tracy's that guy. He's talented. We saw it last year, and I think it's just a better situation than it was last year when he was averaging 13 points per game and was a solid RB2. A couple different flex receivers coming. So this one, Denver versus Houston. There's no certain. I would say Nico Collins. He's going to get Chris Adams' drain. This 5th-round corner on him, really small, like 175 pounds. So that could be an advantage for Nico. And then Riley Moss. So it has the size advantage against these guys at least. It's going to be a tough matchup overall still, but it is not the worst matchup for fantasy receivers like it'll say in your apps. 8 first-read targets is a big bump compared to what he was getting. He had that before the concussion in his last game. So that volume looked a little bit better. It was improved. That concussion is not going to affect fantasy production at all. So at least there's no injury risk there. The matchup is usable. Still a lot of touchdown upside. I would still start Nico Collins, and I am in a league in the flex. Another flex guy, more boom bust for this matchup, I would say is Jordan Addison, even though he hasn't really had a bust game yet. He got close, but he had a touchdown last week. That touchdown upside is insane. Just throw in the red zone every single play, it seems like. But this Detroit matchup, I like it because I think that it will force them to use JJ McCarthy. I don't think they can get away with having McCarthy throw 20 times like the first couple weeks of the season. So those first 2 games, McCarthy wasn't the greatest. It was against the Bears. He had that great 4th quarter. And then the Falcons defense, who I was mentioning earlier, amazing this year overall. So a little bit better. Looks better now than it did in week 2 for McCarthy. But Addison, that explosive play guy, that touchdown guy, Detroit, their passing defense 25th in explosive plays allowed this season. Tyrone Arnold's going to be that main guy, which is the 5th worst in terms of points per route. So obviously the high draft pick, he's got that talent, but in terms of his production this year, it's been lower than what Lions fans have been certainly wanting. So JJ, in terms of Justin Jefferson, I think is a must start, but Addison, I think fine there too in the flex. I've got 2 rookie receivers next. I'm guessing you can figure out who. But we're going to go Ted McMillan right back to him after last week. Dalton wasn't the greatest, but McMillan was still good. And it's a very similar matchup as Metcalf had last week against the same Packers defense. That outside receiver, similar build at least. And the Packers defense, they're so good against the run. They're pretty solid on the inside, but those outside receivers, they are 29th in that fantasy production. So McMillan, as an NFL player, he's been incredible. He's getting the volume. He's 10th in receiving yards. I think Bryce Young comes back and hopefully, I don't think it's going to be any worse than Andy Dalton. It hasn't been the start of the year when he wasn't playing well, but hopefully he kind of comes back like he did last year maybe, starts playing a little bit better. So I like McMillan this week, and that other one is going to be Travis Hunter. Jacksonville versus the Raiders. I'm starting him in a flex in one league where he had 14 targets last week, but it wasn't just those gimme screens or those under 5. Like before last week, his targets under 5 yards was ridiculous compared to over 5 yards. Where 14 targets last week, but 6 of them were over 10 yards downfield, which is really good for him because he has that yards after catch ability. But if you can combine that with those downfield targets and his big playability downfield, that helps a lot. His routes alone, though, make him a start, in my opinion. The last 2 weeks, he's run more routes than anybody, which was especially at the start of the season. But in the offseason, that was the worry. It wasn't like, oh, is Travis Hunter going to make plays? Is he going to get volume? It was, is he going to be on the field enough to get 14 targets? Not that much, but 14 targets and make those plays. He has been on the field more than anybody in the NFL these last 2 weeks over Jamar Chase, who is number 2. So he's running a ton of routes. He's not playing too much defense anymore, and he was getting the volume. And I know Thomas Jr. went down to injury, but he still played 21, or he still ran 21 routes in the second half of that game 2 weeks ago before the bye and didn't have a single catch. So Hunter had 8 targets, and Thomas Jr. was out there for most of that second half. So I really like it for Hunter off the bye. Maybe gets that rookie bump in a matchup that's pretty solid right now. The Saints and Rams, not going receiver for once. We're going to go back to running back with Kyren Williams. For me, this is more of the Tyler Shuck play. I'm not too confident in the Saints offense this week against the Rams. I don't think they're set up for too much success. So the Saints, their running defense isn't bad. However, even with a good running defense, they've allowed 6 goal line touchdowns to running backs this year, one of the most in the NFL because of that offense and just that team in general. They're getting scored on a bunch. So I think Kyren Williams, who kind of lives and dies off of those goal line carries, who hasn't had the touchdown luck at the goal line specifically this year, as a good goal line back on a good offense with a good offensive line, I think that can turn a corner this week. So I had a really bad game last week before the bye, and now he comes back against the Saints team and hopefully can start to turn it around here. We kind of get 3 primetime games this week if you count Kansas City and Buffalo. We're not going to get Pacheco in this game, so 45% of those Kansas City running back touches are up for grabs. I would say a desperate start would be Kareem Hunt. He's got his role. Brashard Smith can grow. His volume can grow as well, but he has his role as that goal line back, the red zone back, and the short area back, and he's extremely good at it. 6th best in success rate this season on his carries. So that touchdown upside, pretty big in this big prime time kind of game that is projected to score over 52 points. So I really like it for his touchdown potential. He's had the 3rd most inside the 5 opportunities on the month, which is extremely high. So Buffalo, they're really good against receiving backs, but not too much on the ground. Brashard Smith hasn't been too productive in terms of his carries. So I would guess if either of them were to get more of that rushing volume that Pacheco's leaving behind, I would say it's actually going to be Hunt. So I don't mind starting him this week. Seattle and Washington. Deebo Samuel, I think you can trust him. It's been rough, but it's been rough for obvious reasons. When McLaurin is not on the field, he averages 4 points per game better. The big thing, though, is Mariota. 2 times better this season when Jaden Daniels is the starter. 9 opportunities per game. And have targets, a carry or 2 here and there when Jaden Daniels is out there compared to Mariota, where they're 30th in pass rate. They're just not throwing the ball. So I would say against a Seattle team who is banged up in the secondary, overall been average throughout the season, I still like going back to Deebo Samuel, trusting him with the volume that he can get with Jaden Daniels back and just the production, a much better offense, more scoring opportunities, all of that. And to end the video, Arizona and Dallas, start everybody. Start everybody, but my desperate start that I'll talk about is Bam Knight. Dallas has allowed 30 points per game in half PPR to running backs in the last 5 games. 30 points per game is insane. They are 32nd by a lot. We saw this split between Bam Knight and Michael Carter these last 2 games basically be 60-40 in favor of Knight. And now Carter is out. I think DeMercado will get some. There'll be somebody else in that backfield, but there is a very high chance that Bam Knight gets 70 to 80% of these touches. Say he gets 18. He's at 31 the last 2 weeks in terms of targets and carries. Say he gets 18 versus Dallas. Based on his fantasy points per opportunity, Dallas is allowed. You'd expect over 15 fantasy points on the day. So Kyler coming back, I think this offense will score a lot. They're projected to score a lot of points. So running back against Dallas in a good situation overall. The talent matters a little bit less for me, and I would say a desperate start for Bam Knight. Appreciate you guys watching. I'll have more videos next week, Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Buzz in the building. So keep watching. Appreciate you guys, and see you soon.